to look at Chapter 6, Basic Inventory Costing Information. So this is just some of the basic information that you're going to find in Chapter 6. Some of the things that we look at as far as Chapter 6 goes is how we actually determine who owns the goods. This applies when those goods are in transit. So that would be the FOB shipping point, FOB destination. It also is looked at when we look at goods that are actually consigned. So those are some of the things that we're going to have to look at in a little more detail. When we do look at the consigned goods, the owner of those goods is not the actual store or the person that is holding those goods. It is not the person that has possession of the goods. So if you are a consignor or a consignment shop, you do not own the goods that are in your shop. They belong to the owner. Whoever actually the customer is who the owner is. And so you would not include those in your inventory. The only time that you include those in your inventory is if you've actually purchased those goods from someone else. So just remember that if you do have consigned goods, they do not belong in the store's inventory. They still belong to that customer that owns them. When we look at FOB shipping point, with this, it's really looking at who owns it while we're shipping this particular item. It also looks at who's going to pay the freight on the item. So what we look at here is we have the seller over here. So this is the person that actually sold the goods. Then it is in transit. So we've put it with UPS or we've put it with a shipping company. And then over here we have our buyer. So when we look at FOB shipping point, what we are looking at is it is going to change hands as soon as it's shipped. So as soon as the seller hands it over for it to be shipped, it actually is going to change hands. And what this means is that it belongs to the buyer. While it is in transit. So it belongs in the buyer's inventory. It also means that the buyer has to pay shipping. So that's very important when we look at this FOB shipping point or FOB destination. It determines who owns it as well as who actually has to pay that shipping, because things that are actually on your floor are not the only things that you actually own. So once it's shipped, even if you haven't received it yet as the buyer, it still belongs to you under FOB shipping point. Now when we look at FOB destination, again, we still have this whole thing where we're looking at it being in transit, it being shipped. But with FOB destination, what we look at is it does not belong or it doesn't change hands until it reaches its destination, until it reaches the buyer. So the whole time that it is being shipped, it belongs to the seller. So it has to be in the seller's inventory. So we have to add any of those items that we have shipped already, have to be added back into our inventory because they are not considered sold until they actually reach that buyer. That's when we have completed that good. And so in this case, the seller has to pay the shipping. So those are the two things that we look at. FOB destination changes once it reaches the buyer, once it reaches its destination. When we're looking at FOB shipping point, it actually is going to change at that shipping point time period. Some other things that we have to look at in this particular chapter are some of the inventory costings that we will be using. We can use specific identification Now, specific identification is where we know exactly what is going to be sold. So if we're on a car lot, we can use specific identification because we know which car we have purchased, how much we've purchased it for. We also then know how much we've actually sold that car for. So we can use specific identification with those big ticket items like that we actually can break out and know what we are looking at. Our other three methods are what we have are as assumptions. So it doesn't follow what's actually happening. It is just our cost flow assumptions. Now we have FIFO, we have LIFO, and we have weighted average. FIFO means first in, first out. It is the one that most closely shows what actually happens in a store. Generally speaking, the first goods that come in are the first goods that go out. So it does follow the actual physicality of what's happening. With LIFO, we look at last in, first out. This means that those very last goods that we received are the first goods that we are going to sell out. Now, again, that is just an assumption. It's not what's really happening in most cases. The only time that LIFO really is going to coincide with that physical flow is if it is something like coal or hay and things that are, actually stuck on a pile. And then you would be taking the last things on the pile off first to be sold. But generally, LIFO is not how the physical flow actually works. So remember, this is not looking at physical flow. This is only looking at cost assumptions. And then the last one is that weighted average. And with the weighted average, it takes everything that we purchased, it adds it all up, divides out by the total, and comes up with that average cost. And we'll look a little bit more detail later with that. And looking at FIFO, I want to look at this, and what we're going to say here is these are the same types of things, okay? These can be Barbie dolls, these can be, marbles, whatever you want them to be. But we've purchased these at different times of the month. They're the same exact, identical item. They maybe just have cost us different prices at different times of the month when we purchased it. Maybe we had a discount that we got on some items. Maybe the prices increased over time. But what I want to do is just look at this cost flow assumption. And remember, it's just a cost flow assumption. We actually don't know, especially if you're thinking about, Barbie dolls or toy cars. Do we know which one we actually sold? No. We don't know if we purchased that one that we just sold on June 1st or if we purchased it on June 30th. They're identical. And so we have no idea of knowing exactly which one is or was sold. So this is, remember, just an assumption of cost. With it, what we're saying is the first items that we bought are the first ones that we're going to cost out. So if I have a total of 14 units and I've sold 11 units, what this is saying is, from this point, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red units. So I'm going to sell, I've sold 11 units, so 5 of those under this first in, first out method would be those red units. So we would sell the red units first, and then we still have 6 to account for. And so the next ones that we're going to account for are going to be those 3 purple units. And that means that we're going to have 3 more that we have to account for. And so the next set of units that we have are the green units. And so what this is saying is we would sell those 3 green units. And so we would have sold everything that we needed. Now this is going to give us our cost of goods sold amount. If we take how much those actually, the red units cost, how much the purple units cost, and how much the green units cost. What is left over is what we call our ending inventory. Now, we have already sold all of these. Those are gone. We have sold these. Those are gone. We have sold 3 of these guys, right? So they're gone. So what we're left with in our ending inventory is we are going to be left with 1 green and we will be left with 2 of those blue units. And so our ending inventory will have 3 units in it, which is what it's supposed to have, because if we look at what we had total was 14, we sold 11, so we should have 3 in ending inventory. So with this FIFO method, the first units in are the first units that we consider to be sold. Those would be in our cost of goods sold. The last units would be those items that would be in ending inventory. So you'll notice here that with this, and when we look at these last units, these are the ones that you're going to see over here that were left in ending inventory. So that is using that FIFO system, and we haven't used numbers. We'll do a worksheet that uses numbers. I just want you to get used to thinking about it with these colors so that you can see how the system actually works. And this would be that more of that perpetual, more of the periodic system of how you would look at these different items. Again, we're going to look at LIFO. We have a total of 14 here. We have sold 11. What that means is that our ending inventory is going to hold 3. Now, under this LIFO system, what we're going to look at is we sold 11 units. So which ones are we going to sell first? Well, we're going to sell these last units first because it's last in, first out. So the first units that we're going to sell are going to be those blue units, and that is going to leave us with 9 to sell. So we've sold these. Next we come to the second thing we're going to sell is going to be these green units. So we get to the green, we have 4 of those. We're going to sell all 4 of those units, and that's going to leave us with 5 left to sell. And so then we move up, and the next ones we sell are these purple units. So we come in, we grab the purple ones, we're going to sell all 3 of the purple units, and what that's going to leave us with is we still have 2 units that we need to sell. Now those 2 units that we need to sell are going to come from these red units. So the last units we're going to sell are going to be those red units, and now we have actually sold everything off. Now what that means is that for that ending inventory, now remember we said for ending inventory we had 3 in ending inventory. The ones that are still left over, the ones that are in ending inventory, are those last 3 units that we have left. And remember, those are the very first units that we purchased. So when we look at LIFO, the last units we purchased are the ones that are going to be in our cost of goods sold. The very first units that we purchased would be our ending inventory. And so this is the cost flow that you actually see here under that periodic system of these inventory assumptions. So again, LIFO, last in, first out. FIFO would be first in, first out. And so you need to look back over these and make sure that you understand, how we look at these different items. LIFO starting from the bottom, working up. FIFO starts from the top, and it works down. So just remember, FIFO, we start with those first units and work down. LIFO starts with the last units, and it works up.